Welcome to season 2 of the Magnetic Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Schmidt. With me today is the CEO of Refine Labs, Megan Bowen. So right away, I just have to ask the question before we get into the great background. I need to know, is that so weird to hear your name after Refine Labs? And does it suck every day to kind of look and be like, yes, I am the CEO? Like the person you hear about all the time, like, yep, that's I'm the CEO. Because I always say personal brands are great. And then sometimes when you work with them, next to them, you sometimes end up, having to search for your own identity in that. And so I just want to come right at it and just ask you that question because it's been killing me and we had to reschedule twice. And so I'm like, I'm just going to ask you right away. Tell me.
Number one, doesn't feel weird to be a CEO. I always knew that I would be. It was just a matter of time. And number two, I actually get asked this question a lot relative to like, well, Chris is such a big brand. Like, are you feeling intimidated? You're stepping into big shoes. No one's ever asked me on a podcast though. So I appreciate the gumption there.
There you go.
But the truth is, obviously, Chris is an amazing marketer and thought leader and has cultivated a huge following and has made a ton of positive impact in the world of marketing and go to market and B2B overall. But I view myself at his level, right?
Yeah,
maybe I don't have enough, the same amount of LinkedIn followers. And obviously my approach and my thoughts are different and stand on their own. But I don't view it as a competition. I view it as us having very different styles, different types of thoughts, and are on a level playing field.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for what he's been able to build and to cultivate. And I have a lot of, confidence in my own ability to show up and take over. And what I'll add to sort of close out this answer is Chris is such a visionary and a founder.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he is in his zone of genius, he is seeing trends and patterns, he is innovating, he is creating. And Refine Labs has gotten to the stage where it's actually more important for that particular business to focus on operational excellence and scaling and evolving our service design. And so for what the company needs right now, my experience and my skill set is perfect for it. And on top of that, I've been building the agency from the ground up with Chris. So the tribal knowledge, the background, the trust that I already have with the team is already there. And then Chris gets to go back and play in his zone of genius and focus on building Paceto. So I think I only have, I have utmost confidence in myself. We're starting off the year really strong. Obviously, Chris is still evangelizing everything that we do at Refine Labs. And so he'll continue to positively impact the company with his, his thought leadership halo, if you will.
Yeah. It's been glowing bright, but yours has been too. And
I started, you have to like drink your own Kool-Aid. I
loved it. Can I tell you about how much I love your posts? I just, because I love you as a person. I think you're great, what you stand for, how you work. I think it's great. When I see your posts, the thing that makes me happy is that it doesn't have 600 likes on it. Is that it's a person who's coming through saying, I am not trying to be that or whatever, because as someone who is trying to be that sometimes, because that is the line of work I have found that when you bring people into the company, it's taken me a while, like working next to that thing, whatever that is, can be really interesting to say the least. And I think for you, you get to say, just like I'm a different person than Steve Schmidt, I am not that person. That person is not me. We are Refine Labs. I think the question I want to ask you is, and this is going to get us through your background here a little bit. Cool. You mentioned that you're planting into operational excellence. You've been a COO before. You've ran the operations of companies. Without a doubt, agencies' biggest struggle is the visionary comes and sells them the dream. They love that person. They've been following them on social media. In comes the Oompa Loompa delivery team. And they go, God, I hate Steve when he says that. We don't really do it that way. He says we do it that way, but it's not there yet. And then all of a sudden there's this tension. And it's delivery because that is your product. What made you all come to that, arrive at that point? Because it's usually not a fun point when you see the cracks happening and you need to make drastic change.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple topics I'll touch on in that question. So to directly get into sort of like the operational piece, I think the biggest disconnect often is when you have any type of like evangelist, thought leader, founder, CEO, talking about those big thoughts on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
you lose a lot of the nuance, right? So you're communicating these big ideas, these new ways of thinking, new ways of measuring, different strategies and approaches. But the reality is when you get into the dirt, like the complexities matter, the nuances matter. It's
Yes.
not as simple as a LinkedIn post, right? And so I think really codifying what we really do best in comparison to all the other marketing agencies out there and really leaning into who we are and what we do best is the
Mm.
primary. Like, you have to put a stake in the ground. This is
Yeah.
where we're going to be really good. We can't do everything, so we're not going to do those other things. This is what we're going to do. The
Yeah.
secondary piece of that is in the sales process and in the onboarding process is being really transparent about expectation setting. And so, I still take every single sales call at Refine Labs. People hear from Chris. They come in, what's this? What's that? People also can misinterpret a lot of his content. I literally had a
Of
sales
course.
call earlier today. They're like, Chris Walker says never to do paid advertising. And I was like, well, no, he doesn't really say that. Let me clarify. Well, look at this post. I'm like, okay, I get how you could interpret it that way, but there's a lot of nuance in his perspective here. Let me explain that. So the
Test it before
reality
you
is,
pay for it. Yeah.
yeah, all of that's great. And it serves an amazing purpose, right? He helps a ton of marketers. Obviously, it drives inbound demand. I got a couple of DMs lately, for inbound
Yeah.
from my LinkedIn posting. So it can work.
It's
Any
popping.
CEO can do it. Any CEO can do it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the other piece. It's just expectation setting and management and making sure that people really understand what they're getting and then aren't up in the clouds with all of the impressive, exciting, inspiring, visionary thoughts. And it's like, well,
Hmm.
what do you really need help with? What are you
Yes.
trying to achieve? This is the roadmap of how to get there.
Hmm.
I think the last thing that I want to say is, I've always actually had a self-limiting belief that I am not creative, I am not a visionary, and in my 40th year on the planet, I am like kicking that belief to the curb.
Yes.
And I actually think I am creative, I am visionary. I haven't tapped into it because of this limiting belief that I've had before. So we're going to continue to innovate and do new things and evolve. I want to continue to try to develop my own perspective on different topics that matter. Again, that also help the business that I'm running and growing right now. That's why we're all
Hmm.
on LinkedIn. It's okay to
Yeah.
say it out loud.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, everybody.
So, and I think that's where I think that's probably the thing that I learned the most from Chris is really recognizing that being able to work very closely with that type of a person, that type of a leader, I was really able to observe, how he approaches visionary
Mm.
sort of thinking and innovation. And it's really about observation, pattern recognition, talking with the market, and assimilating all of those things into interesting and new conclusions, right? And so I think anybody can be visionary, anybody can be creative. Some people are obviously more prone to that than others, but I wanted to make that point because that's a big goal of mine as I kind of reinvent myself this year and embrace my new role.
I think it's good. I think it's good because you're talking about human things. You're talking about creativity. You're talking about, I think, what we all crave in our day to day, even as a CEO, is like, how can I create? And something I've always said, because I believe this and have seen it enough to say that I believe in it and working, is anything that has to do with content for a CEO or a founder, whether it is a video, whether it's a podcast, whether it's writing, somewhat therapeutic. I'm also very much a learning cycle to take the thoughts, put them onto paper, and try to formulate them and get feedback on them. So I always say posts a lot of times are feedback. Like, so you
Absolutely.
toss an idea out there, and if it goes and people start commenting on it's a hot topic, right? And you kind of know that that's its own little beast. And I want to talk to you about something interesting that I've observed on LinkedIn. We'll get tactical here before we dive backwards in your life. Is let's drill down into a tactical moment here and kind of get into the weeds, if you will. On LinkedIn, a post is a blip. It happens, it's gone, it's fodder on the internet. It can exist later. Sometimes it come back to life, but it's kind of gone. It's on a feed.
Yeah.
There are things in LinkedIn that are called newsletters. And I've paid a lot of attention and I've done it for a year and took Chris Walker, your advice, Refine Labs, test it. And I said, I'm going to keep testing this on me. It was therapeutic. Every Sunday I woke up, wrote a newsletter, hit publish, went back and edited the shit out of it because I was like, well, God, I don't know what I was saying there. I didn't spell that right. And wasn't doing it how we would do it for a client, but thought, well, could we do this for clients? And would it be powerful? Because it's only powerful I can prove with a year's worth of data that it delivered something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some Sundays I was like, fuck this, man. I do not want to write this newsletter. Nobody even fucking cares. Like I haven't got a lead in 2 months. And of course, that's not the way to think before you write a newsletter, right? I'd say it's been a good stream, but the one thing I like about it is, and I think about someone like you, this is not me pitching you. This is just, I think you're a good writer. Newsletters, long form, right? It gets people into a cycle. Number 2, it gets into their inbox. So it's not dependent on the feed. Number 3, it has SEO settings that power the newsletter. And so they can become these hyper, as long as it's not a shitty blog and like an authentic newsletter coming from somebody, I feel like that is a powerful mechanism across the world of demand and marketing too. I want to get your thoughts on, you don't even have to drill down on LinkedIn if you don't want, but just like that format of a newsletter in terms of creating that consistent content stream versus the blip of posts.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a resurgence on newsletters over the last year or two. And it's funny how I feel like the world kind of goes in cycles, and perhaps the B2B ecosystem does the same thing as well.
Just 10 years behind. That's
all.
All.
Newsletters and, emailed newsletters used to be super huge. They kind of went out of favor and now they're coming back. And I think they're valuable for a few reasons. Number one, the ability to have sort of long form content and really expand beyond what it is on a LinkedIn post. It's much harder to do with LinkedIn posts. Number 2, you're also building your own audience, right? So if LinkedIn shuts down, you have your list of newsletter subscribers that you can continue to grow. So you're reducing your reliance on a particular platform. So I think there's a lot of benefits in doing so. We started testing a new newsletter for Refine Lab specifically, like not me personally, where it's a little light right now. We're doing a roundup of content releases, events, et cetera, with the intent to really sort of improve that and grow the content.
I would read that. I read Justin Welsh's. I read another cat who's really good at email.
I love the Category Pirates newsletter because it's a ton of great content. And then there's like funny jokes at the end. The key here is I've been reading your newsletters as well. And I've especially loved over the last few months, you've really been talking a lot about business building, like the founder ego. You've had these themes that I think are really fascinating. I relate to. I always get a couple of good nuggets.
Awesome.
The quality, though, has to be there.
Yes.
So there are a lot of newsletters that just aren't that good. So I think it's harder than people realize, I think, to produce high quality content at that frequency. But if you have something to say, and I think in so many contexts, as business and otherwise, I think it's a fantastic approach.
The tough tactical question, I got one more on the dovetail of this. This is your wheelhouse. I think the toughest thing for people when they're writing, so let's call it writing a non-paid advertisement, is a call to action. And we hear about it. We see people, well, this is how you format a post and get a call. It's not that easy. Like it never is that, you just click here and watch your visitors come. In the business you're in, how much importance is placed on the call to action in the entire consideration of, call it, that lead?
Yeah. So I think what I typically anchor on, whether I'm in my own personal LinkedIn post or when we think about how we're strategizing like on campaigns for our customers, we try to anchor on the call to action being something that will benefit the reader or the buyer or the person, right? So you took a moment to read this. Clearly you're reading this thing. You're interested. Here, click here to learn more or to, watch the next 45 minutes of this video clip that you've watched so far, right? So I think most call to actions, like really aggressive, like book a demo, buy this thing right now, give me something of yours, make a purchase, give me money. Like those types of CTAs should be, not that they should never be used, they should be used, but very strategically and not as your default. And so you need to be thinking about putting yourself in your reader's shoes and what would they be interested to know more about? So like I mentioned this Category Pirates newsletter, Christopher Lochhead and Eddie Yoon and one of their other writers. And, a lot of their call to actions are they will write excerpts from different books that they've published on Amazon. And they're just saying, hey, here's an excerpt from this book. If this topic is super exciting to you, here's where you can get the full book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, that's smart because they're basically giving me 50% of the book. And I'm really intrigued, and it's not that much more to like get the rest of it, right? So like I think that's a really good use of a CTA that is beneficial to the reader and beneficial to them for me to like potentially make a purchase.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten that all figured out yet, how are you bringing people back to value added digital experiences, videos, information where they're going to continue to build this affinity to you?
Yeah.
So I think that's what people kind of skip to the like, buy now, buy my thing.
Or they don't have it at all. And I've realized that, so maybe if you're this person who has a big following, I'll use John Barrows, for example, Beck Holland, throw people in there who, let's say if you post and you're not really asking for anything, right? And because people have been taught, well, in content, you just want to tell stories and do this. And people go, that's great. I love Megan. Her posts are so great. Her stories are so great. But there's not this, oh, by the way, and if you want to work with me to solve this specific problem, click here. And I seem to be seeing more of that lately in the feed because I think people are trying to find ways to get there. We're going to talk about that and dive into YouTube here in a second, but we're going to go backwards before we go forward. So for you, when I first started following you, you were at a little company called Managed by Q in New York. You were the COO, and then you had a stint at Platters, and then you're over at Refine Labs now for 4 years. Obviously, blips maybe the wrong word, but it was obviously a great career at Managed by Q, and then a little bit of a blip leading that amazing CS where you probably said, oh, now somebody else wants me to work there. I'm going to leave Platters and go to Refine Labs. So all of that happened in a matter of 7 years. And so that's a lot of change. My guess is if you went back and said to yourself, although I love your confidence, I always knew I would be, she said, it still has to happen,
Yeah.
Would you think in 2017 that you would be the CEO of a demand gen agency?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Not only your dream board.
No. I wasn't really sure, to be honest. I probably thought I was going to just keep operating like in-house at some B2B SaaS or tech company, which has sort of been all of the chapters of my career. I've been at different industries and different types of products, but sort of in B2B SaaS overall. Platters specifically, I had worked prior to Managed by Q. I was at Grubhub Seamless for 4 years, pre-IPO on their B2B side. And I left Q because we had an exit to WeWork. We had an acquisition to WeWork. And I was
heard of WeWork.
Yeah, that's like for the next podcast. And we'll bring, And I went to Platters because it was in the same space as Grubhub Seamless. I was very familiar with it. I got an amazing offer. The sad part about that chapter was the pandemic just decimated this business because it was 100% office food ordering. So literally in March 2020, we went to generate, I think we were bringing in like $8 million a month to $0 a month. Oh. And so the company had to make a bunch of changes. I ended up hanging on for a while to see if we could pivot. And then I decided, the world might be ending. Not sure what's going on. Like, best of luck to you all. I'm going to take a moment. I was actually planning to start my own consulting agency in the summer of 2020.
What were you going to be? What was your thing? What were you?
I was going to focus actually on like customer operations and go to market sales, focus more on sales and CS. Because at the time, marketing wasn't really in my wheelhouse, but I have a ton of sales and CS experience and obviously like company operations experience. Mm-hmm. And so Chris happened to his timing was impeccable. He reached out days after I quit my job. And he convinced me to team up with him to build Refine Labs. But I was intending to I had the WeWork acquisition. I had a payday because of that. I had some runway and some time to figure it out. I was like, this is the perfect time for me to do this. I really love working with people. So I think it was exciting to be able to get in at the kind of the ground floor of a business opportunity and kind of partner with the founder to build it up. So
you guys didn't just run a company, you grew it to 20. I mean, you guys had 20 million plus in revenue in 2022, right?
We did. Yeah. Our revenue has dropped a bit because
Yeah.
of some of the economy changes and the
We heard
impact.
the shift in the economy would
Yeah.
affect you too.
But we survived, and
Yeah.
we're back to growing again, and
Yeah.
things are looking up. So, I mean, and that's, any business is going to go through those storms. That's part of running a company, is weathering the storms.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, let's talk about specifically what Refine Labs does, because I think it interests me a lot. And I will say, I almost feel a little naive to say that when people would say, well, who is the best in demand? I'd say, well, you should probably work with Refine Labs, right? I don't even know who number 2 and 3 are. And that's, to me, I go, well, that's good, right? That's marketing and that's brand affinity, and it's all those things. And I've taken successful lessons along the way, from whether it was something Chris said or the brand was doing, and just watching and observing that. So I want to say just kudos to you guys, because whether it was just observing your website and going, man, that's really smart, or that's not so smart, but just, and honestly, I feel like a little bit of the cheat code was given to me, because I just kind of got your guys' testing, and I go, well, if that works for them, I'm going to try that. And I never have been what you guys are in my business, thankfully, because we can work. I still dream of working together. I've always fallen in love with the execution. Not that you guys don't execute, but I am just now finding that even running a small little, 65, 70K a month marketing agency with all freelancers is the most joy that I've had in work. And because as the CEO with no board, mind you, for the pressure, it almost seems like when I went to ChatGPT and did the thing that we kind of do when we start dreaming, and said, well, what would 10% month over month growth be in 10 years? If I just keep this little number growing. And it said, well, your monthly revenue would be 12 million. And that's what I was reminding, that slow growth is a very good thing. And compounding
Absolutely.
interest is there. And it seems to me like, from the outside looking in, I'm going to give you my guesstimate on what's happening at Refine Labs. You don't have to tell me what's going on, but I'd say restructuring a little bit, focus on operations and customer success, maybe bled a little bit due to too much growth too quickly. And also the allure of a Chris Walker to the brand, maybe got some of the wrong people employed at the company who thought it was different than it would be, and didn't maybe want to roll up their sleeves. And so you now said, okay, cool. We know we can do a lot of revenue. No question. We pushed that lever down and we did it. We also know we can break. My job is to come in and make us profitable by making us repeatable, consistent, and have very low customer attrition, and grow our existing base with new products and solutions. Is that an accurate statement from the outside looking in?
Yeah. And I think it's funny because, me and Chris both originally, one of the reasons I did team up with him was where we really shared, I think our shared passion was, we really felt B2B, go to market, marketing, sales, customer success. We just felt it was all broken. It
Yeah.
needed to be fixed. This growth at all costs mindset was killing companies. The irony was, because we were able to create so much demand, and also like, it's not just like we're smart people, so we grew this fast. Like, the market conditions around us, right?
Yeah.
It was just, VCs were just throwing money at any startup and pushing
Yep.
them to advertise. So all of these things combined, we basically grew at all costs
Yeah.
without trying to grow at all costs. And we had
Yeah.
all of the same sort of consequences as a result. We
Ooh.
overhired, we had to
Yep.
correct, we raised prices too high that were unsustainable. So then when the market leveled out, we realized operating margins were not where they needed to be.
Yep.
I think in the constant desire to innovate, we were introducing new concepts to the market, like
I saw all this happening from the outside.
revenue
I'm following you. I
R&D.
just going,
And
yep,
then
revenue R&D lab.
people are confused. Like,
Yeah.
I
I
love
was
you.
like,
I love
am
you
I
guys. But what do you
community?
do?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I was in it. I was like, there's community going on. They're building the software that's intent based. I can't really tell what's going on.
Yes. Yeah. And we did. We built the vault. We
Yep.
tested with building a Salesforce app called Watchtower to help with
Yep.
measurement of marketing programs. In hindsight's 2020,
Yep.
we should have been more rigorous and steady with our growth, regardless of whether you're trying to sort of brute force growth or you just have so much demand. Things will start to fall apart if you grow too quickly. It's just
Yeah.
inevitable.
Every time.
you have to manage that growth appropriately. I think the other really interesting thing that I think hurt us in 2023 was this market confusion,
Oh boy.
not really knowing who we were, what we did, what our services were. So, and it was because we were doing a lot of things, right? And so this was also part of the decision that Chris and I made. It's like Refine Labs is going to be a B2B digital marketing agency, a demand generation agency. We're going to do demand strategy consulting, paid media execution,
Yep.
creative content production.
Boom.
That's it, right?
Yep.
The Vault plugs in because it's an enablement for our customers. Yeah, we can monetize that as well for people that can't hire us but want access to our frameworks and playbooks. But the software and some of these other exciting ideas that Chris was talking about and having, they could stand on their own and be their own company. And so that was
Yeah.
a big strategic decision we made last year because of a lot of the things that you're saying. So I think it was smart to do that. I'm sure Chris will do great with Paceto. And,
Yeah.
you'll notice even with the website, with how I'm deploying my content strategy now, which is also continuing to evolve, I'm really focused on clarity.
Yes.
That achieving market clarity. I don't want people to just love us. I want people to know exactly what we do.
Yeah. Well, whew, that's refreshing because I feel like you are my partner, Melissa, talking to me about what I need to do with my company's messaging right now and it coming into year 2. And I think it's so hard. It is so hard to distill it down to this. So I'm going to ask you, what is it that you do in its simplest form possible? Because let me go first and then you tell me how I did. And then you tell me what the real version is, because this will be interesting. I would say that Refine Labs is I'm going to steal your words, a digital marketing agency that allows B2B SaaS and service companies to measure and monetize their growth. That's terrible. Like, see, that's just where you get caught up in like the cocktail party question.
I know. Well, so I always I'll even do this on sales calls when people are like, what do you do? I'm like, well, when I tell my mom what we do at Refine Labs, I say, we help our customers get more customers. That's really what we do.
Yeah.
Now, the deeper dive into that is, yes, we are a demand generation, a digital marketing agency. We will partner with B2B SaaS companies who have market traction, have hit or exceeded 10 million in revenue. So that there's enough market traction for this offering. We can help you maximize the ROI of your digital marketing budget. So we're going to come in, audit, and set your strategy. We're going to identify the channel mix and the approach. We're going to help build the creative content that we're going to deploy. We're going to drive more qualified traffic to your website, who will convert into sales conversations, who will convert into opportunities and revenue. But I don't know, helping customers get more customers that's pretty good too.
That sounds pretty dope. I like it. I like the simplification on that. We're going to now talk about something very meaningful, which is deep sea diving. And you recently had a 40th birthday and you went scuba diving. And I saw the picture, and number one, I was like, oh my God, she's on a vacation far away. That looks fun. Then I was like, that's the one thing that I want to do, but I'm so scared of it. And we can get into that. But talk to us about that. First time?
No. So I did my first dive in Cancun in February of 2023. And we're in Mexico, where they don't give a shit if you are certified or not.
Yep, just go.
So we did 2 dives, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the best. This is the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I was like, I have to do this again. Actually asked my dive master that day, Gustavo. I was like, Gustavo, if you could scuba dive anywhere, where would you go? He was like, Thailand. So that's why I booked the trip.
I love it.
Me and my husband got formally certified, the online test, the pool sessions. We did 4 dives in the Atlantic Ocean in October when it was cold and dark and scary.
So cool.
That was scary. Thailand was gorgeous though. And it is scary. What I will say is, this is why I love scuba diving so much. You're afraid, but you know what you need to do. And it's a relatively safe activity if you are trained in how to operate the equipment and understand what could go wrong and what to do if something goes wrong, right? And there's no better feeling to be really, really scared, just like your body having all of this anxiety, to do the thing that you're scared of to realize while you're doing the thing that you thought was so scary that it's actually like the coolest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
And then to complete that activity and to feel this euphoria, this dopamine, this like insane confidence boost of like 40 minutes. I was so scared. And
Yeah.
now I did it. And that was so fucking cool. And now I want to dive again. Let's go again.
Yeah. Let's go.
I can't describe how good it makes me feel. And then when you're underwater, it's basically like you're in space. You're in a whole nother world. All you can hear is your own breath. That's all you can hear. You're weightless. So we did 5 dives. On my 5th dive, I was so relaxed. I was barely using my air. It was our longest dive. We went 47 minutes on one tank. And I was literally just like playing in the weightlessness, spinning your body around. Like you're not really supposed to swim. You're supposed to like let the current take you. You're supposed to make very like sort of very specific movements to move yourself forward or up or down. Even literally, the way you breathe, you'll go up, your whole body will go up or down.
Yeah.
It's this really cool experience that I think you can only experience underwater or in space, or maybe some
Yeah.
weightlessness thing, chamber or something. But I mean, I'll let you react because I could just keep talking about this because it's my new obsession.
I know. Well, I think it should be. I think I heard something one time that really made sense to me. They said, I don't know if it's Elon Musk or maybe somebody else said, why are we putting all this money into going into space when the ocean's right here?
Yeah.
And it's so unexplored.
Yep.
And there's so much to it. Yet we're like, woo, let's go to Mars and And so when I saw that, I was just reminded of number one, that is, it's definitely something I want to do. I was thinking Vietnam, lots of piranhas. Number two, it is the thing I'm most scared of. I have the irrational fear of being killed by a shark. Irrational. It completely like, dude, like I hear you going like, yeah, you can just hear yourself breathing. I'm like, yeah, you turn around, you're fucking killed by a shark. Like,
You can go
it's just
diving in
over.
places where there are not known sharks
Yeah.
too.
And of course, and I would still think I would be eaten by a shark. That's the power of the mind
Yeah. It's
at work. And so I want to go stare that thing in the face and just go, man, life's been hard. I've been able to get through some things. What will that feel like?
yeah.
Water scares me. And I think it's a symbolic thing for life. And maybe this is how some people approach their CEO role, but you get in it and it feels pretty cool. And you don't see everything under the surface. And you're just like, this is pretty. But the second you go to the surface, it can be beautiful. It can be treacherous. It can be everything, but you can't see it. And that which is not seen takes belief. And therein lies my problem, which is being a very science-based kind of person. Like I, struggled with a lot of things. That is something where I go, I know science. I know there's a lot of shit under there that I think is amazing. And I'm uncertain about it. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's
It is
interesting.
scary. I am scared every time I dive.
Would you
Even
go to space?
yeah.
Would you go in a hot air balloon?
Yeah.
Would you skydive?
Yeah.
You do everything. Like
So
there's
yeah, I think
nothing.
like that I would try anything. Yeah. I consider myself very brave. I
Yeah.
consider myself, but I feel fear. I feel fear. You can still feel fear and do the thing.
Would you climb Mount Everest?
Ooh, I don't think so. But you know why? Because it's become like a zoo up there. There's like
Yeah.
a line to like get up to the
It's like
main summit.
Coachella and Burning Man. They're all like going up to Mount Everest now.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd be interested in maybe doing like a big hike but I think for me it's doing something that's gonna make me feel that feeling that I just described about like
Yeah.
powering through the fear and having that sort of spectrum of emotions. But I think nothing is ever as bad as you think it's going to be, especially when
Ever.
you're really fearful or worried about it.
Mm.
And
So
you
when
made a
you think,
comment. Oh, go.
go ahead. No,
You made a
please.
comment about like being a CEO, like, oh, that feels so cool, and then this and that. And it's funny because a lot of people, I got a lot of congratulations, which was really nice. Thank you. I appreciate it, this and that. But I've been trying to implement like a morning meditation exercise, and a meditation exercise this morning was on a really interesting topic. It was basically like everything in your life is bad and good.
Huh.
Everything. there is no one thing that is only good. Today, one thing will be good, a different thing will be bad. Next week, it'll be a different good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
But there is always good and bad. Like that is literally life. And so being a CEO, like, yeah, yeah, that's cool that I have the title. Yeah, I feel accomplished to a degree. And it's not to diminish the effort or the accomplishment there, but it's a hard job. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like bad about it, but there's a ton of good about it. But just like any other job at a company, it's going to that fundamental balance of the good and bad will still exist. So, I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot where
Yeah.
it really like puts everything on a level playing field if you look at it that way.
You and I both listen to a lot of podcasts, I think, right? It's safe to say. My Rich Roll, he's hit or miss for me, but I like this stuff that's good. Of all people, the other day I somehow ended up in a playlist, and Tom Green was on Joe Rogan. I'm like, I don't really listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. No offense. And I certainly Tom Green was like a guy in the 90s or whatever on MTV. But I'm like at the gym, like on the treadmill, and I'm like, I don't want to listen to Revenue Vitals right now. It's too serious, like because I've listened to all of those and then all the cool podcasts, and that's really the only cool revenue podcast I found. So that's kind of on my playlist. And anyways, comes on and he's talking, and it's kind of interesting. So I'm like, this is weird. Tom Green's been through some shit. Like he lives on a farm and raises goats in Canada, like is a member of the community, like sells hay and like barely gets by every year. Still does stand-up comedy. And something he said like was very, very like it just struck me. And he goes, there's interesting. He goes, hell only has one-way doors and they're from the inside out. And I remember thinking like, essentially he's saying like, you get stuck in hell. You can leave anytime, but you got to choose to leave. No one enters hell. There's no doors. Oh, you're in hell now. It's like, no, you're in hell because you put yourself there. You got to get out, and you just got to figure a way out.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a way. And everybody's sitting there going, Megan, Steve, just push through the door. And as a CEO, a lot of us, I mean, it's not hell, but a lot of people go, hey, idiot, I can see it from here. Like if you just knew that when we did this and this, then this happens. And I feel like you're the kind of CEO that would say, I have an open door all the time, and I need to know that. Don't hold back from me. You're not offending me. And break down our process and let me know every single crack and crease in this so we can fill that out. Is that exhausting is my question. Because at the end of the day, you got to sleep and be you and go deep sea diving. You can't worry about if everything has been perfected on the back end at your day job.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think when you think about a company, it's a group of people like working together to achieve some shared goal.
Yeah.
I am not a micromanager. I hold people accountable and I know exactly what everybody should be doing, but I give people a chance to do it. For me, it's clarity up front. Here are my expectations. Here is the bar. It's high, by the way. It's okay if you're not hitting it every day, but this is the bar. If you miss it too many times, we're going to have a difficult conversation about that. These are the outcomes that I need you to achieve. And I want you to figure it out. If you need help, if you need more direction, let me know. So I think it's empowerment and accountability. I think a lot of times when leaders say that, though, they don't take the time to really clarify the important things like expectations and outcomes.
Yeah.
And then people don't perform. And then they just blame the team instead of taking accountability for not playing their part in the process.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be perfect. Mistakes are going to be made. Balls are going to be dropped. Again, that's part of life.
Yeah.
You just got to make sure the right balls are kept in the air for most of the time.
Yeah. Spinning plates, right? One of them is going to break. You just can't all the time. You got to let one fall and go, well, that's the least critical one.
Yeah. And I've had difficult, the last couple of years have been challenging for me personally and professionally. So I've learned a lot and have gone through a lot of changes. But my new mindset is I need to focus on making sure I'm my best self. I need to make sure that I'm doing what I need for all of the people on the team. So people have very clear expectations and outcomes that they're working towards. I need to keep thinking ahead, to keep charting the course forward. And then I need to trust that the people that are in the roles that they're in are going to rise to the occasion. and then deal with it when there are problems. That's one of the things that I hold most dear is my team will tell me anything.
Yeah.
So I always know what's going on.
Good. I want to know what's going on with this last question. It's going to be a weird one. I like to kind of double plant and flex a little bit into the personal stuff and just get a little bit out of business here. Before we tell everybody where they can find you and we can wrap so you can get to your next thing at the top of the hour. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
My
awesome.
question to you is if you could remove one part of yourself, what would it be and why?
Remove one part of myself.
Yeah, not a physical part.
Interesting. So my personal, you brought up Mount Everest. Every year I like to have what I call my personal development Mount Everest, the thing that I'm trying to improve or fix about myself. This year, it is bolstering my self-worth. So if I had to get rid of something, it would be, I don't know what the opposite of that is, my self-doubt, my lack of worthiness. I posted recently on sort of the difference between confidence and worth, which has been a really interesting personal exploration for me to really understand the differences, because not until I really internalized those did I realize I needed to use a different playbook to improve my self-worth and my self-love. And that the playbook that I was using was building my self-confidence, which is good. And that's part of it, but not the most important part, come to find out.
Yeah. It's wild. And it's so refreshing to hear a confident, successful CEO get on and say, I struggle with that too. And I am a person. That's what you're so damn likable. You're just very personable. I can see you walking into fires and saying, hey, I'm here. Like, this sucks. What are we going to do to solve it? And there's nothing more soothing in a room than a CEO who will do that. So I would love to work for you. I mean, I always say if the thing doesn't work out, I mean, I've tried to hire you as a CEO before on a DM. So maybe someday, just know, I have the most utmost respect for you. I was talking to Melissa before this. She's like, she was super cool. I met her like 6 months ago. I'm like, yeah, pretty memorable, isn't she? She's like, yeah, you don't forget her. And so thank you. People won't forget you for coming on. But if they do, where do they find you online?
So, I am not a social media person personally. So the only social media I'm on is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And you can also check out Refine Labs at refinelabs.com.
Keeping it easy. Keeping it easy.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like we're going to this era where a lot of people are going that direction. I can see where people like you are setting sort of that example. I've been off Insta and Facebook for 2 months now.
I've never had it. I've never had Facebook, never had Twitter, never had Instagram, never had Facebook, just never set the accounts up.
Just deep
I've gone this
diving.
far.
Do you like go kill wild boars with spears on the weekend too for fun? You're just like kind of like,
that's something, I'm actually an open book. I talk a lot about my personal, things on LinkedIn and this and that, but I'm actually a pretty private person. And so there's a few things that people know, I scuba dive, but
that's right.
I actually keep a lot of things in my personal life,
the most intelligent people do. Note to self, Steve. Megan, thank you so much for all of our listeners. Season 2, we are thickening it to our 10 guests this season. We have 3 more to go. Megan at Refine Labs, again, newly appointed CEO, been running the ship for a while over there at Refine Labs. Have nothing but respect for them, for you, for taking the time to listen to this damn thing. It's been about 50 minutes. We edited it down to 42 minutes. If you're one of the 6 people who made it all the way to the end, thank you. If you're one of the 100 or so who started on, we'll give you the good clips. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is Steve Schmidt with Magnetic.